Hello, I'm Locke Meredith. I'd like to invite you to join me on the next Legal Line show. It's going to be an interesting show. I have my two adult attorney sons discussing with me kind of what is the process if you decide you've been injured, car wreck or whatever, and you need to consider hiring a lawyer. But really what we're going to talk to you about is how do you figure out what your case could possibly be worth? What are the factors? What you can do to help yourself. For example, if you get in a car wreck, I'll give you a hint. Pull out your camera and video and take photographs of anything, everything, and everybody. So join us on the next Legal Lines with attorneys Collins Meredith and Mitchell Meredith. Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has served our community by airing Legal Lines, a community educational program for 18 years weekly to Baton Rouge and the surrounding areas. Watch Legal Lines at LockeMeredith.com or Cox Channel 1004.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates. When insurance companies have been unfair, we've never been afraid to go to trial. Fighting hard to protect your rights, we never settle a case out of convenience. We only settle when it's right for you. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Hello, welcome to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I'm very pleased to have back on the show for the second time my two adult attorney sons, Collins Meredith, Mitchell Meredith. We're going to talk to you today about kind of a case from beginning to end, from the moment that you call a lawyer to if you hire the lawyer and you got to go through the whole process, a trial and even an appeal. Let's dive in, guys. And we're discussing it in the context of an injury case, whether it's on the job, rear-ended in a car, whatever the context, okay? So if somebody calls in, what happens, Collins?
Absolutely. Staff takes in the call. Usually they'll take down the basic information so that we know a rough idea of what the case is about. Then they'll immediately get you on the phone with an attorney, which is an important step. We want to hear everything that's going on. We want to make sure we're catching everything important on the front ends because we want to be able to give you advice real time on how you should be handling your case.
Very important what you just said.
Very important.
Because you can preserve evidence that if you wait is gone, like photographs and of injuries, photographs of skid marks, if anything like that.
And even surrounding video footage from different businesses that are there in the
important
event that there's conflicting testimony.
Yes, very important.
Absolutely. And so hopefully you're calling us at the very beginning, maybe shortly after the accident, probably even before the police reports come in, so that we can make sure that all of that information is getting preserved on the front end.
That's a big, big deal.
Very big
You
deal.
cannot recreate evidence. It either
Absolutely
exists and you can use it at trial to prove your case or in settlement to show the other side, hey, we need to settle this thing. It is what it is.
Absolutely.
You wait and you're going to get screwed possibly.
And in our experience, we need to be, as the attorney, proactively calling these witnesses and asking them the questions before they've seen an attorney who, sadly, it shouldn't work this way, but somehow it does. People's stories and testimonies change given time, whether it's because their memories fade or somebody has put a little bird in their ear and it's changed their story. You get
or
it
they're
on
just
the
lying
front.
because they don't want to have to pay more in insurance premiums.
Absolutely.
All kinds of reasons why all of a sudden you can't remember or it's not that way.
And remember, the court has exceptions for these things. I mean, that's the reason why you got a present sense impression, which is the idea of people's memories are better in the beginning, or an excited statement. People say stuff in real time that is different than if you wait. So that's the first thing that we do.
Another example of why it's important to call, even if you get in an accident and you're still there. Look, we're not ambulance chasers. We've never been and we never will be. But there's some stuff you need to know to do to protect yourself if you're injured, for example, in an automobile accident, that you can do, and honestly, only you can do sometimes, which is take pictures of your injuries, take pictures of the other car, take pictures of the license tag, take pictures of the driver who hit you, take pictures of any witnesses who were in their own car, pictures of skid marks on the ground, pictures of damages to the cars, both cars, pictures of any witnesses or people standing around, pictures of the police officer who interviews you, so you get badge number and all that. Very important.
And I've gotten in the habit of telling my clients on the front end, if you have the ability to, put your phone on record in your pocket. Witnesses come up and talk to you, you may not get their information. Cops forget to get the information. We're chasing witnesses down. And it's unadmissible unless we've gotten their information, can take their deposition later. So you have to get that information. If the other party comes up and talks to you, a lot of times they will admit fault on the scene and that changes. So record that interaction or avoid the interaction and you don't give a statement. But if they want to come up and talk to you, let them talk, record it, and then you've got that preserved for later. And I'm telling you, a video or a picture speaks 1,000 words.
Amen. Mitch, let's talk about the videos, because you recently had a couple of cases where defendants are saying, no way we're gonna pay, it's not our person's fault, not gonna happen. You got videos and you zoomed in and all of a sudden the story changed.
So obviously we got to be a little bit careful with some of this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, technology is amazing nowadays. You've got cameras everywhere, whether it's businesses, at a church, if it's a Ring doorbell or a Nest doorbell somewhere, or it could simply be the body camera footage off of the officer. A lot of attorneys don't actually go and get that information. You know, so one of the very first things is, if there's conflicting testimony, what video footage is out there? Because oftentimes, like Collins was saying, once the accident happens, everyone starts just talking, and they're talking the truth. And then things start changing after the fact.
And it's important to note too that videos write over themselves at most of these places within roughly a 30-day period of time, some 21, some longer. But if you don't go send them something saying preserve that video on the front end, you're going to lose the opportunity to get
Which is
that.
what we do.
Which is absolutely
If you hire
what we
us,
do.
we're sending out letters saying preserve the evidence.
Absolutely.
But we got to know it's out there.
You got to know what's out there, and that kind of goes back to what Collins was saying. Even if you go out there and you're taking photos of the scene, the accident, the injuries, whatever's going on, I've actually started getting in the habit of saying, if an accident happens and you're able to, because obviously someone might have serious injuries, take a video of the surrounding scene. And that way you can zoom in. And not only that, but you've got access to Google Maps, Google Earth, what's there. You can literally drop a pin at the location and see it. You can walk almost in real time. Now you got to check the dates, and there are things that are behind that. But I mean, it's very, very important. So video evidence is huge, especially on the front end, if you don't get the photos that are
And it's
needed.
going to become more important. I mean, just the technology is changing everything, everywhere. AI is coming out and all this stuff, you know, artificial intelligence. There's going to be so much information that you can be overwhelmed. So you have to know what information is important and what you can do to preserve it. So let's kind of shift it. So that's kind of like the first phone call. It's really important that you get in touch with somebody, a lawyer, if you can. And look, a lot of people are hurt, like you said. A lot of people are wired out like crazy. All they care about is their babies in the backseat. We understand that. But if you have a chance, this is a very important time in the history of your claim. And we can't stress enough how important it is for you to think and know what to do and do it.
Absolutely.
And having a lawyer to call and say, hey, what do I do, is a real big step you can take to help yourself. So let's say they've done that, and let's say they're now scoured wherever, and 15,000 lawyers have been recommended to them by anybody and everybody, and they decide to call a lawyer. We've talked about that. Let's talk about now they want to meet with a lawyer. And we recommend they meet with plenty of lawyers to decide who they connect to, relate to, who appear very knowledgeable, and are the right fit for them. So let's say they come in. Mitch, what's next?
All right, so next, once they come through the door, you're sitting down as the attorney with the potential client, assuming that they sign the contract, and you are truly diving deep into it. You are taking the time to get all of their information, their insurance information, their license information, their actual health insurance information, to verify whether or not they have Medicaid, Medicare, who you might have to pay back, or is it an ERISA lien that you'd have to pay back?
Meaning insurance.
Right,
involved.
different types of health insurance. And then again, you're tracking down, hey, are there any witnesses? You're making sure you've got the photos. And not only that, but the next big question is the assessment of the damages and liability, which is very important.
And liability is really the first. I mean,
That is 100%
damages
the
can be
first.
horrible, and honestly, they're two train tracks going in the same direction. You got to work on both, but they're both extraordinarily important. So let's talk about that on the next segment, how you assess liability and how you assess the damages component, which again, most folks are like, what's my case worth? We'll do it on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines. My son's Collins Meredith, Mitchell Meredith, attorneys in this office. We'll be right back.
Hi, I'm Mitchell Meredith. Injuries happen when you least expect them to, making your life more complicated. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates, we know this, and we strive to help each of our clients during these times. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call at 272-5555.
Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan and Associates has won for our clients over $175 million over the decades, but our greatest success is our clients who have chosen and trusted us to help them. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call. You've got nothing to lose.
I'm lawyer Collins Locke Meredith. Trust is important when hiring an injury law firm. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan Associates, thousands have trusted us and gotten the results they deserved. Visit us at LockeMeredith.com. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call, 272-5555.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I have on the show for the second time my two adult attorney sons, Collins Meredith, Mitchell Meredith. We're talking about you get injured, how this whole system works from the beginning to the end. If you're injured, you're hurt, it's not your fault, somebody else's fault. What do? We were talking about best that you call somebody like a lawyer to advise you what to do on the scene so you can preserve evidence. We collect it in the phone call scenario as best we can. If they decide they want to talk to us, then we set up a meeting and we meet with them. All right, let's take it from there. We the big question always posed is, what's my case worth? So let's talk about damages. Go ahead, Mitch.
Well, I think before you end up going in the damage route, you have to establish the liability, which is why you've got to make sure that you get all of that information on the front end. So assuming you actually get liability cleared up and you go, hey, look, this is the person who caused it, they do in fact have insurance, which comes to the damages, then you jump into the damages analysis. And I think Collins is probably real qualified to discuss that.
Yeah, there's actually two components to the whole liability scene, because one is this a case to even pursue, because there may not be any insurance that's going to pay for it, and it's a hard thing to have to tell somebody sitting at your desk who has a broken leg or something even worse, I'm sorry, there's no insurance coverages. But we turn over every rock to make sure that is in fact the case before we tell somebody, hey, sorry, the guy that hit you has no insurance and you're screwed.
And to be perfectly clear, we look at cases that even maybe don't have clear liability. Right. It's our job as the attorneys to clear up liability. That's 100%. What we do all day, every day. We take cases that other attorneys maybe say they don't want to take at times, and we run with it, and we've had great success getting recoveries for our clients. Why is that the case? Because you got to look at every component. You got to call all the witnesses, but then you also have to look at the damages. If damages are properly worked up, if you're dealing with a certain type of policy, let's say 1530, which is the state minimum, or maybe a 2550 or a smaller policy, if damages are severe, even with disputed liability, there's a very good chance you end up getting that policy or that recovery, which is as much as you can be able to get for your client under most circumstances.
And the reason is because there's this concept called bad faith, where a liability insurer for the at-fault party has a duty to protect that insured. And if the damages of the plaintiff are so severe, astronomical, and all they got is 15 grand exposure, and there's some possibility that at trial the plaintiff could win, their insured is going to owe potentially millions. When that insurer could have paid just $15,000 to protect their own insured who'd been paying premiums for this very coverage. So there's a lot of complicated analysis and components to the liability question, and we're just kind of skimming it right now. We'll dive in later on the whole comparative fault, whether it's a workers' comp claim, that kind of stuff. So let's shift gears to the damages. How do we decide what a case is worth? One, it requires that you have medical treatment. Dive into it, Collins.
Absolutely. So let's assume liability is clear. Well, what are we assessing now? It's damages, okay? First is obviously the injuries. How severe are the injuries? The extent of the injuries. Are they permanent or are they temporary injuries?
Exactly. And I was going to say, severity of injuries determines kind of the amount of money you get. If it's what's called a soft tissue, like a sprain or strain, not minimizing the pain or anything, versus a fractured femur, leg bone, the person who's got the muscle sprains and strains isn't going to get the same kind of money that a fractured leg, because they just haven't endured the pain and suffered.
Well, it's something that I always tell clients whenever they're walking through the door, especially they're saying, what's my case worth? I go, first off, you need to understand a very simple concept, which is a broken pinky is worth a broken pinky, whether or not you're hit by someone who's got $1 bajillion of coverage or someone who doesn't have any coverage. It all comes down to what are your injuries. And so whenever we are assessing someone's damages, like you're talking about, it comes down to the injuries. And next is, assuming liability is clear, okay, well, what does their future look like? What does their future medical treatment like? How does this impact their life? Not only that, but how many other people are trying to pursue the same amount of recovery or coverages that are out there.
Meaning
for
multiple
you.
people
multiple
were
people,
injured.
multiple claimants. You know, you
And
got
there's
people,
limited liability coverage.
correct. You can have people who are involved in significant accidents, and like you said, there's a minimum policy. Unfortunately, that's the hand you're dealt. But then that's when you analyze: is there uninsured motorist coverage? Is there potential course and scope coverage, such as was the person driving for Uber or a rideshare program? And that's where you're literally overturning or turning over every single stone. And it all comes down to what are the individual's damages and are they genuine?
So let's kind of hit those categories of damages. You brought up medical treatment, and the defendant, person at fault, is going to pay damages or be responsible and liable for treatment from the date of the accident, ongoing treatment, but they are also liable potentially for future medical treatment. Let's say you got a broken back or a bad disc injury and you had surgery, but you're going to require some type of ongoing treatment with shots and ESIs and all the various other stuff that they may use, pain pumps, all the stuff, into the foreseeable future, the rest of your life maybe.
Right.
So it's past medicals and future medicals. It's also past pain and suffering and future pain and suffering. Let's talk about the other categories.
Yeah, absolutely. There's lost wages, past and future. So, and it could be either you're out of your vehicle and it prevents you from working, and that gives you access to the property damage. You could make claims under the property portion of the policy, or it's because your injuries are so severe that you can't work. Okay, and it may be temporary or it may be ongoing, which would be future lost wages. You have to have experts that can testify to these issues. It's going to be the same for future medical treatment as you were describing. You have to have a doctor that is saying what is needed in the future. Otherwise, you can't present that information. There's also going to be the way it's affected your relationship and your ability to do things. So loss of enjoyment of life is, look, I love to ride horses. I can't ride horses anymore. I was playing with my kids. I can't play with my kids the same way anymore.
That's a loss of consortium claim. Mitch, explain that. It's kind of a weird word to say, I can't be with my wife anymore, my husband anymore, I can't play with the kid. Explain.
Well, so what Collins was talking about was the loss of enjoyment of life, and that is for, if you are the victim, it's impacted your enjoyment of life. But at the same time, it can impact your loved ones' lives tremendously. You know, to where it's, like you said, it's a loss of consortium claim, which is the loss of love, society, and affection.
And the spouse or the family member has a right to bring that, which is Mitchell's point, which is a different type of damages.
Yes.
You know, now it's the legal term is a derivative claim, which means it follows behind the main claim itself.
And that's important because, Collins, if there's only a $15,000 liability claim for the at-fault party and damages just of the driver of the car who didn't do anything wrong, and his wife next to him also injured, but this guy's got a broken leg and she just bumped her head on the steering wheel or something, he's going to exhaust it, so she's not an additional claim. We're going to have to explain kind of insurance coverages on the next segment to kind of explain how that becomes an issue potentially. So what other damages other than those that we've discussed? I mean, it's a litany of them.
We haven't talked about property damage in great detail, but I'll let Mitch go ahead and explain that.
Yeah, so in terms of property damage, again, what you're running into is all of the same issues, but typically it is your vehicle a total loss? Can it be repaired? Who's going to pay for it? Which is a big question, because if you're going through your own insurance to do it, contract governs, which means you got a specific time frame. If you're going through the other ones, it's different, but at the same time, you have what's called loss of use or diminish.
All right, we'll continue talking about this on the next segment. This is Locke Meredith, Legal Lines, Collins Meredith, Mitchell Meredith. We're talking about cases from the beginning to the end. Be right back.
Hi, I'm Sean Fagan of Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan & Associates. Open the phone book or look online. There are plenty of lawyers to choose from. And if you ask any of them, they'll agree that the vast majority of claims settle without ever having gone to trial. And I'll tell you, any lawyer can settle a claim. It's not hard to settle a claim, but it takes hard work to get a client what he or she deserves. At Locke Meredith, Sean Fagan & Associates, we have a proven record of working hard for our clients. Whether you hire us at all, give us a call.
Welcome back to Legal Lines. I'm Locke Meredith. I have my two attorney sons, Collins Meredith, Mitchell Meredith, on the show today. We're talking about kind of the process, the legal process. If, let's say, you're injured and you want to hire a lawyer, or really from the beginning of the accident, let's say, what should you do? What's the process? We said we're going to do it beginning to end. We're going to probably do it beginning to middle. and then we'll follow up with another show on this. Collins, let's dive back in. We were talking about loss consortium claims, derivative claims. Kind of quickly discuss that, and then Mitch, you hit the property damage.
Absolutely. The reason it's important is because there are two segments of a policy that you can recover under. One is the bodily injury per person, and one is the per accident. Okay, so if it's a derivative claim, it means it's arising from the injuries of another person. Okay, so for instance, a loss consortium claim is my right to recover because somebody else in the accident was injured. So if I'm the spouse of the person that was injured, I have a right to recover for the way it's affected my life because my spouse was hurt. But if the policy, if there's only one portion of the policy we can recover under because I was not in the car, and my husband's claim takes up all the policy, that per person
Say
portion
15
of it,
grand here.
15 grand, I'm not going to get a recovery.
Because there's no more
consortium
money
claim.
to get.
Compare that to if I'm in the car and I'm hurt and both of us have a claim.
Now it's that policy that's a 15-30
We each have
coverage.
access to 15,000
Exactly.
under the example.
It's split in half. It's doubled actually is what it is. And no person can get more than the 15 grand max per person. But if two people are injured in the car or three or whatever, but let's say two here, then you get the full 30 with 15, probably if they both have broken legs, let's say, going to each party. Shift gears. Let's go to the property damage quickly with derivative and loss of use, et cetera.
Yeah, in terms of loss of use, I mean, property damage is pretty straightforward. It's either your vehicle's a total loss, which means the cost to fix it is going to exceed a certain threshold depending on where the accident happened, or it's going to be able to be fixed. Now, while it's being fixed, or even if it's a total loss, if you are out of your vehicle during this time period, you have a loss of use claim, plain and simple. But not only that, but once, assuming that it's not a total loss, and your vehicle is in fact able to be fixed, you may very well have access to what's called a diminished value.
Yeah, who wants to buy a
That's the
car
whole
that's
deal.
been in a wreck?
You go and you buy a new car. One of the questions
why
that
everybody
asks
gets
is,
CarMax.
You got it. Where's the Carfax, right? And that's because they want to know, does this have an accident in its history? And if so, you can negotiate it down. So why should you, as the victim, have to bear that burden? And that's essentially a diminished value claim.
All right, let's shift gears. So we've mentioned several times, but it's because it's so much of the initial phone call communications, and even in our meetings, what's my case worth? But what the case is worth depends on what your injuries are and how you treat it. Do the doctors diagnose the injury? Do they treat it? Do they say that the accident caused? Let's go into that. Explain how important, Collins, the medical treatment is for the big reasons, and then we'll dive into kind of the medical treatment kind of options that are available.
Absolutely. I would say first and foremost, if you're hurt, see a doctor. People try to tough it out. That is a terrible idea.
Don't go
for
in.
multiple
We know
reasons.
you're not going to exaggerate, but don't minimize it either. Tell the truth.
Absolutely, absolutely. And why? Because there's a gap in treatment, meaning there's a period of time from when you were hurt until you actually get into treat. Insurance companies are going to try to say you're hurt from something that happened in between. You have to document that your injuries are causally related to the accident.
Or that it didn't hurt very much because you didn't go very often. Didn't go to
Exactly.
physical therapy. Didn't get your medications. There's all kinds of stuff they point to say it couldn't have been hurt that bad.
Or they point at you and say it's your fault. Oh, doctor ordered physical therapy, but you didn't go to physical therapy. Why didn't you go to physical therapy? If you'd done it, you would have gotten better. Or you wouldn't need surgery because you've done physical therapy. It's very important that you do what your doctor orders.
Exactly.
Or they will beat you over the head with it.
That's right. So Mitch, let's dive into the treatments that are available. Like there's all kinds of litany of doctors that you can see. You know, there's the GP, general practitioner.
Mm-hmm.
Generally, he's the kind of, he curates the patients that come in and looks at their injuries, maybe gets an x-ray, whatever, decides there might be the need to see an orthopedic or a neurosurgeon, et cetera. Explain that process.
Yeah, so like you were saying, it all comes down to the actual injury itself. Assuming that you don't have one of these injuries to where you go to an emergency room or urgent care and they say, hey, you got to see an orthopedic doctor because you need surgery or possibly need surgery. Realistically, the hospital or the primary care doctor is going to say, hey, here's some muscle relaxers, here's some pain medication, follow up if the pain gets worse. After that time period, if your pain still persists and you have symptoms, you typically are going to follow back up with that doctor, or you might even just get straight into conservative treatment, which is chiropractic treatment, physical therapy, and that is all designed to try to figure out, is this just muscular soft tissue injuries, or is this something more? Because typically soft tissue injuries resolve somewhere in the range of 3 months. Sometimes it can be more,
Right.
sometimes it can be less, but that's kind of the range that a lot of
And the
doctors
longer
run
you
into.
treat for soft tissue injuries, usually the more money you're going to be awarded
Well, yeah, 'cause
because
you're
you suffered
hurting
for
longer.
a longer period of time. So let's talk about the test quickly, Collins, that the doctors use that Mitch mentioned to kind of figure out, unless you come in and a bone sticking through your skin, to figure out whether or not it is a more serious injury, either a hairline fracture or a torn disc or a bulging disc or whatever, torn ligaments. What are the tests initially that they do?
Every ER is going to take x-rays. They may take CTs depending on if you're complaining about serious head or neck injuries or back injuries, and depending on how bad the accident was. If you come in by an ambulance, there's a better chance they do that. They may even do an MRI, but I don't see it as often. Generally, if you're less injured or you didn't come by ambulance, they're going to say go see your PCP, who they consider to be your quarterback, and then they're going to let the quarterback tell you where you're next going to catch the pass. Okay, it's kind of how they do it. They're going to try conservative care first, which is what we talked about, hoping that you get better. If you don't get better, then they're going to send you to a specialist. Okay, usually they'll do that after they've ordered an MRI. Why are they doing the MRI? They want to see how severe your injuries are and if there's maybe a permanent injury or something that is explaining ongoing long-term pain in the area you're complaining of.
So they do the MRI. Typically, it shows soft tissue. For example, a bulge in your disc in your neck or your back. The CT scans are showing more of the skeletal system, bones and such. They're kind of fine-tuned for that. Although they're both becoming so highly technologically advanced that who knows, there may be no distinction. There's also nerve conduction studies. There's a multiple other litany of tests that they use. And if those become positive, then they try and decide, how do we fix this? Do we let them just suck it up and live with it for a while, see what happens, or it requires some type of surgery? Mitch, discuss that.
Yeah, honestly, it's going to come down to a client or patient per patient basis. No two cases are the same. So you could have someone who's 19 years old. A doctor's not going to want to perform surgery on someone like that unless it is 100% needed because of the risks. Now, if you've got someone who's 55 years old, most of their kids are out of the house now, that's a different story. So it truly is, you got to tell your doctor what's going on, and the doctor is going to do what's in your best interest because that's what they go to school for.
And oftentimes they will prescribe stuff like ESIs and blocks and other type of nerve conduction studies to decide exactly what is the pain generator here. There might be 2 bulging discs or one herniated. They're trying to figure it out, and so they're diagnostic, and in some ways they also help deal with the pain. But the whole goal of the docs at that point is to zero in what the injury is and to figure out what has to be done to get this person better. I tell you what we're going to have to do is follow up on the next set of shows, because we only made it halfway through on kind of taking the case, injury case from beginning to end. But I want to thank you both very much. Great show. This is Locke Meredith Legal Lines. My sons Collins Meredith, Mitchell Meredith. Thanks for being with us.